Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are back. It's draft day morning. It's actually the night before, but for you guys, it's draft day morning. I'm jealous of you, like kids on Christmas morning, right?
Well, I mean, we're getting the gifts too, so I'd say, and remember that, as we start talking about the draft and who we're going to get and how pissed off you're going to be about something is we are getting players that will make this team better than they were as the time you're listening to this. This will be a better team. We will, we will get assets that will make this team, this roster better. So always keep perspective on the draft when you get super pissed that they didn't get the quarterback you wanted, or we, did something that you don't agree with. That in the end of the day, we're getting first and second round picks and day two guys and stuff that are going to make this team better. And that's part of really mission number one for this organization is get this team finally better.
Yeah, um, I think that's why it's Christmas Day for me. It's fun to see the ways in which we are going to be shaped for the next 3 years, right?
Yeah, and could be longer. I mean, this
Hopefully, it's
today,
longer.
as we're recording this, on draft eve, it is the 20th anniversary of the day that the Giants, I think, had the fourth pick and traded up and got this quarterback from Ole Miss, and you know, it changed the fortune of this franchise. So uh, one pick can reverse the fortune of a team. It doesn't necessarily have to be the first pick, but this is the anniversary of that. So it's you know,
Well, I mean,
well,
you where were you because they traded up and they got a guy from NC State. Really, is what happened.
well, at the end of the day, they had Philip Rivers, but
Right. So
they
talk me through that day for you, that whole
yeah,
process.
that was actually funny because I was in California for my sister-in-law's wedding to my brother-in-law, and I just started dating, cranky wife. She was cranky girl I was seeing at the time. So was a cranky girlfriend, I guess. And so I was by myself because she was with her sister. So I was in a hotel room just outside of San Francisco, and the draft back then was on Saturdays at noon. So back out there, it starts at 9 a.m. So I was in this small little Fairfield Inn by the airport in San Francisco, watching as all this whole thing unfolded. And there were rumors throughout the week that Eli wanted to come to the Giants, said he wouldn't play with the Chargers and everything. And you know, at the time, it was one of those. The Giants really hadn't had a good quarterback. A franchise level quarterback. Not a stopgap guy like a Kerry Collins or something, but really since Phil Simms had retired, and they went for it, and they traded assets and they got their guy, and really, you know, let it play out. I mean, I think if Eli Manning was drafted in 2022 as opposed to 2003, I don't know what kind of a leash everybody would have given him, given how everything between social media and just the increased coverage of the NFL and the Giants and the fans and everything. He was allowed to mature, and he was allowed to percolate as a Giant. And I don't know what that had been like today, but you know, the good fortune it was that we let him, and two rings later, his place should be secure in Canton.
So it's interesting. Do you think that Eli Manning was allowed enough time to grow? Because he had kind of a rough beginning, and he was thrown in his rookie year. It's not like he sat the whole year.
Yeah. I mean, I never did. I don't think there really ever was any doubt, like after year two, year three, like kind of there's always been a question about Daniel Jones. And I know it's not apples to apples. Daniel Jones wasn't the number one overall pick. The
Well,
Giants
yeah,
didn't trade up to get him.
Eli came out of school much more highly regarded than Daniel
Right.
Jones. So like the skepticism with Daniel Jones started on, in January of draft year. You know what I mean?
Sure. I
So
think
that skepticism went right into non-dominant pet play. So yeah, no, there's always been a question about Daniel
I
Jones.
I again, we're talking, 2019, 18 years ago, but I looking back on it, I don't ever remember the kind of, you know, buyer's remorse by the fans, or kind of like, is this guy ever going to be the guy? Um, I think it was just, let him let him develop, and let's see what happens around him, is what I kind of remember. You
Well,
know,
see,
I re-
2004, I was so much younger, like, mentally than you were. Like, I just didn't follow this stuff as close. I didn't know as much about it. It wasn't as big of a
yeah,
thing, you know
yeah.
what I mean, as it is now. But, like, I don't recall the expectations for Eli being what they are for quarterbacks now.
Oh, it
Like,
was huge. It was
like in
absolutely.
2004, somebody like Daniel Jones, I don't think would have been expected to start at any point in his rookie season.
That is true.
I also don't think somebody like him would have been drafted as high. Maybe. I guess so. I mean, 2004, that year
Sure.
itself. But yeah, I don't think there would have been any expectation for Daniel Jones to start in his rookie year in 2004.
Right. And honestly, even Eli Manning playing we're still coming off of that era where, when you were a first round pick, and even the number one pick, unless you were absolutely dog shit and it was like, we're just going to play you and just get you experience. I mean, his brother played as a rookie and was awful.
Yeah,
And, so I mean, it was kind of like, it was definitely unusual at the time for a rookie quarterback to be like, especially like, Peyton was like, you're starting like day one. I mean, at least Eli, we had Kurt Warner. There was okay, by week whatever it was, I don't remember what it was, week 9, 10, when they said, okay, you're now starting. So he did at least go through an off season, a training camp, sat for a while, learned before they made that switch. Now
correct. Yeah.
today it's, you're the man. And even no matter what's going to even happen this year, whoever's getting drafted at 1, 2, maybe 4, maybe 7, around there, those guys are going to be expected to probably start. I mean, unless unless the Giants do get a quarterback, I don't see that happening right away. But you could definitely see with Chicago. I mean, Chicago cleared their deck for
Oh
him to be
yeah. I
the
mean, there's no
quarterback.
question now.
Washington cleared their deck for their quarterback. So
Did
in New
they? Did
England,
they ship away Sam Howell?
yeah, they traded him. He went somewhere.
I don't remember. I thought I read that story, and then I was like, "Is that a fever dream?"
I mean, New England, I think they cleared their deck too. So, I mean, these teams are ready for a quarterback. They're ready to have this guy say on day one, this is your job. You're the franchise. Go for it.
What's
Back then,
interesting? What's interesting? Sorry, I kind of want to pivoting this towards today, tomorrow.
mhm,
Um, it's interesting you mentioned that all three of those teams have cleared their deck. The Giants onboarded. They brought in Drew Lock, and
mhm.
that's you can shrug your shoulders at Drew Lock, and I'm not saying that Drew Lock is the future of anything whatsoever. What I'm saying is someone purchased insurance and everybody else sold theirs.
Well, I would say I maybe caveat that a little bit because, in spite of some reports we've heard recently, we don't know if Daniel Jones will be ready for day one, week one starting.
Sure.
And if, if we don't decide to either trade up, get the guy we want, or just punt or whatever, we may not get that quarterback of the future in this draft. So we have to be ready for that eventuality, that Daniel Jones is not going to be ready and we don't draft that quarterback. So I think that's a little different.
But I think that's the point. Is those three teams have made kind of their statement without stating it that they're getting a quarterback. The Giants pretty
They also,
clearly are
yeah,
not sure that they are getting
yeah.
a quarterback. There are you know what the hell are there? There's six consensus top quarterbacks in this draft. The Giants are picking sixth. If they were positive that they were getting like they know a quarterback of those six will be there. I mean,
Hmm.
whether you want to count Bo Nix and Michael Penix that high, I know everybody doesn't. If you want to count JJ McCarthy that high, my point is they don't know, and it's partially because it's because of where they're picking. But whatever.
Right. They
Um,
really don't control their destiny like those other teams do. You
Exactly.
know,
But those are the
Chicago,
those are the three that are in position. They could theoretically have gotten something other than quarterback. Everyone has made an argument for, well, what if, you know,
right.
they take this instead, or what if they take that instead? They've cleared their decks. They're taking quarterbacks, all three of them, which leads us to the Giants needing insurance anyway. They had already had it before this. But what's interesting is, in this week's series of smokescreen stories and strange leaks that all contradict each other, I think that the most interesting one is the one that came from J.J. McCarthy himself, which I think was to Rich Eisen, in which he said that he had spent the most time with the Giants of any team.
Well, let's even start that off with the question that was asked. The question was, do you have any sort of like inside knowledge or anything where you think you might go?
Mhm.
And he answered that question right away. Well, the Giants, I spent time with them. I've done this, I've done that. So he didn't kind of like walk the question back or kind of hedge a little bit like, well, I don't know any inside information, but the teams I know I did spend time with included the Giants. The question was asked, and he said, well, the Giants, like kind of read between the lines there. So, I mean, I again, I don't know how these conversations go when they take these guys out to dinner or they spend time with them, they go visit them, they do all this stuff. Like, I don't know if it's one of those like kind of recruiting, like, hey, this is the plan. We plan on, we're making you an offer and that type of thing. So it's possible they may have said, if you're available, we'll take you. I mean, that's not a contract. That's not a guarantee. That's not a promise, and who knows? I mean, maybe JG McCarthy. We also think that these guys are so media savvy and they know how to answer every question the absolute correct way. Maybe he just kind of slipped out and said, without saying they said they're going to pick me, but maybe just implied that they were. So
Just answered a little too truthfully.
exactly, yeah,
So let me ask you a couple of questions here.
sure.
The first is, let's say that the obvious isn't stated when they're out to dinner, like if you're there, we're taking you, or we really want you, something like that. Let's pretend that this story is smoke. Let's just play with that. Um, is it possible that they work this kid intentionally, where they're like, well, I mean, okay, within their meeting of him and doing their normal due diligence like any GM should, by the way. A
Mm-hmm.
GM that may have to face the very stark reality that JJ McCarthy is the only quarterback on the board. You want to know when you pass up on him that you are not passing up on a future Pro Bowler. You need to do your due diligence, and that doesn't just mean the film room, because they have access to a lot more than that. They get to meet him. So they should be doing that. Number one. So like
Absolutely.
even if everything that JJ McCarthy said was absolutely true, that he spent the most time with the Giants, that's actually something that I want to hear. Just on its face, I
Of
want to know
course.
that the Giants went and turned over every leaf and found out that his friends didn't go to his birthday party, and uh
I had the joke all teed up and you just killed me. I was
I'm
like,
sorry.
this isn't the movies where, we make the trade and it's like, let's do our research on him now.
Yes.
It works kind of the opposite. You do your research and then you make an informed decision.
Probably my,
So,
my most annoying thing about that movie actually is how much research is done on draft day, and some of it like super obvious too. But seriously, so in the course of that, is it possible that they're like, we don't want this kid, but let's continue to wine and dine him, because I'll bet you, the reports are going to come out at how many times that we meet him. Even if it's not, they're not banking on him.
that's quite a smokescreen if you're having
Okay.
at least 2 or 3 members of the Giants, if not more, flying out somewhere, spending quality time,
Okay. All
to
right. Yeah.
execute
Yeah.
a smokescreen.
Fair
That's a
enough.
lot.
Okay, and then question B is, do you think it's possible that they tell him point blank, like intentionally to get him to slip? Like
That's a lot of
exactly.
4D. That's a lot of 4D chess.
You think so? I mean, like, what's the harm in lying to him? Like, if on draft night he's available and they don't take him, like, how? Who
In
cares?
5 years from now, he's a free agent, and the
Okay.
Giants are like, "Hey," and he's like,
Well,
"Hey,
let me
fuck
ask you
you!
this:
You guys lied to us."
if in 5 years Joe Shane needs a quarterback for the New York Giants, does he even have a job with the New York Giants?
I mean,
I'm
we
just
draft a
I'm
quarter.
asking a serious question. I don't
I
really
say
know.
I don't know. I mean, we could draft a quarterback. He'd be great for 4 years, and he gets a throw. Joe Theismann's his leg, and we get a new quarterback.
Fair enough.
Or just a quarterback who becomes a free agent,
Hey,
doesn't want to be
hey,
in New York
hey!
anymore. I mean, we don't know.
Knock on some wood over there, will you?
Yeah.
All right. So then let's get into tonight. At
Tonight.
pick. Well, let's start with this. Do you want them picking at a pick higher than pick 6 under any circumstances?
If they if their guy is out there and their guy, they're like, this is my quarterback of the future. I'm going to use quarterback because 95% of the time, if they're going to trade up, it's going to be for a quarterback. So let's just
I'll tell you this: if they trade up for anything other than a quarterback, I might jump out the window.
yeah, let's for simplicity's sake say it's for a quarterback. If there's a guy on your board that you're in love with, that you think, skill set, film, the going out to dinner test, the IQ test, I think this guy can play in New York. I think this guy matches what we want to do. All of those things. And it's like, this is the guy. You trade up and you get him. You don't fart around. You don't let it go. You get your guy. Because when you got your guy at quarterback, all the other problems are secondary. You can work around that. I mean, Kansas City will figure out whatever problems they have going forward because they have their quarterback, and they don't have to worry about that. Now, I'm not saying that this quarterback in this draft will be Patrick Mahomes, but you're looking for your guy for the next decade is going to be your Eli Manning. You don't have to worry about Eli. He's my quarterback. So if that guy's out there and he grades at a level where, this is my guy, you get him. And I have no problem doing that. And I still trust this front office, 98%. Just they do their research, they have a track record. Don't tell me, well, because Daniel Jones, I'm worried about them developing quarterbacks. No, save that. If they find the guy that they want, go get him. And okay, so if it costs you an extra first round pick or something, so be it. If you have your quarterback, that's okay. We'll work. These things kind of work out. The path to rebuilding is a lot easier when you have your quarterback. So, but it has to be their guy. I mean, it can't be, well, JJ McCarthy is the last quarterback left and I need to get him. Like, let's say 3 quarterbacks are taken first and he's still on the board, just because I don't want to miss out on the run. That's not why I want to do it. It has to be, that guy's my number one guy, in this, and I want to go get him.
Well, in the interest of not repeating what's already been said, I agree with everything you just said, 100%. I feel like we've been saying it for a while. I feel like that's just my abject philosophy. It's double my philosophy when your head coach is Brian Daboll. I think that he's going to elevate the most out of any quarterback. So I also trust Brian Daboll's opinion when it comes to trading. What to me that tells me if they are trading up, like this is the best quarterback to work with.
Can I ask you a
sidebar
Daboll question really quick?
No, absolutely not. There's no forum for whatever.
In spite of all the things, the headwinds that they've faced, do you think after 2 years they've gotten everything they can out of Daniel Jones? Forget the injury. I know these are big things to forget. Forget the injuries. Forget the offensive line. Forget the. Do you think for what they can control, do you think they've done everything they can?
For what Brian Daboll can control, yes. I think the on the field stuff. I'm gonna explain this because he played like dog shit last year. Let's be honest. There's a million screenshots you can make about him not being able to read the field, missing wide open throws, all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to deny any of that, nor am I going to defend it.
That wasn't the question, though. Yeah, go ahead.
Correct. So, from what Brian Daboll could control, lasted all of about 5 plays. You know what I mean? Like the first drive in the first game was going well. That's a lot like saying absolutely nothing. It's a lot like saying that the kickoff in the New Orleans Saints first season was returned for a touchdown. It means nothing because they didn't win a single game that year. It's all the same. Once Andrew Thomas went down, you know what I mean? It was a perfect storm of everything going wrong. The allocation of assets in the offseason they flipped a coin and they went all in on weapons. They went very light on rebuilding the trenches or building depth in the trenches. They could only do so much. They gave their first round pick to the defense, not the offense, which, these are all sound football decisions that are justifiable, and the coin flipped in a way that was unfortunate. That is a very diplomatic way. You know what I mean? We can get into what they should have foreseen or not. But Brian Dable was pretty much hamstrung at that moment. Daniel Jones was seeing ghosts. He was never going to play up to the standard that he could play under those circumstances. And that's a limitation of him. You know what I mean? When I say that, I am admitting a fault of his.
Yes.
But that being said, the year prior, Brian Dable developed an offense in which Daniel Jones could succeed without weapons. So,
and I
yes.
think that's an important point you just made. When you say, well, this guy is a quarterback whisperer, he gets the most out of his quarterbacks. It's not just the play of the quarterback. It's putting him in the best position to succeed.
Right.
It's developing an offense. It's the GM getting the parts around him, but it's also the job of the head coach and the offensive coordinator to create an offense that puts him in the best position to succeed. That's why I'm very harsh on coaches in whatever sport it is. And that's why you hear me rant all the time about how much I hate the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, because I always feel like he's not putting his team in the best position to succeed. And I think that's kind of it. It's like you have to be able to put your quarterback in the best position to succeed, you have to make him, get him his preparation in the off season to the point where he's getting the most is a sponge, that he's prepared throughout the week for the opponent coming up. You surround him with players to, maximize talent so they can perform up to his talent level. It's putting him in positions where these plays work. These plays do what he does best, have the best chance of success. So that's a very important point, that they all work together, all these different things.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You would entertain a trade down in what scenario? Who has to be off the board for you to be like, I don't want them picking at 6?
I think it depends on what the offers are first.
Well, of course. I'm not even going to pitch the idea to you of a bad trade offer, but at what point are you like, don't trade down with that guy on the board? So, like, a common example that I think a majority of Giants fans would agree with, or the largest majority that Giants fans would agree with, I'll say it that way, is if the draft goes something along the lines of Williams, Daniels, and May with the first 3 picks to the 3 quarterback needy teams, Harrison Jr. and Neighbors to the following 2 teams, leaving the Giants kind of in a bind with clear drop-offs in talent at both wide receiver to Romo Dunze and quarterback to J.J. McCarthy. This is a common scenario in which Giants fans are like, I want to trade down. Is that the scenario for you? For you, Cranky fan, not the GM, not Brian Dable, you.
Most likely,
Okay.
because again, I feel my thing about quarterbacks usually is kind of like when all of a sudden you're a late riser, you feel like, to me, like a flavor of the month. It's like, it's the last thing I've seen. And again, there's a perception and a reality. The reality is GMs on their boards probably had J.J. McCarthy at a certain spot far earlier than all of a sudden, all the boards had him skyrocketing after the end of last season and this whole offseason, car watch that they have to go through. So to me, like, I'm like, oh, J.J. McCarthy now he's entering the conversation, or Michael Penix is entering the conversation. It's like, okay, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting you picked the 2 guys playing in the national championship as entering the conversation, but you're not wrong. It is just funny how that is, though, right?
Yeah, if you think about it, Michael Penix wasn't even one of the 2 biggest names in his own conference as a quarterback coming into this season.
Yeah, I guess not.
Obviously, what's his name? Caleb Williams got all the things, but Bo Nix had a lot of, he's been around for so long. And people have opinions on him. I mean, there's people that love him and people are just not into him. But it's interesting. I heard this. I'm going to give the credit. I think it was uh, Ryan Russillo said it on his pod today. It's like, how come Michael Penix gets a pass for being crappy at Indiana, but Bo Nix still has Auburn haunting him?
Well, it's a fair point, but there's a lot of different things in there. Like Indiana, I believe he was running more in that system. He
A
wasn't
little
really
more.
he wasn't really truly a pocket passer. They certainly weren't protecting him. Not that he can protect himself, but
Mm-hmm.
um, it is kind of interesting though. Like Bo
It's
Nix,
narrative driven,
yeah, a
basically.
little bit, but for me, Bo Nix leaving the SEC to go to the Pac-12 is sort of like running away from competition. He was already in the most elite competition, so anything would have been viewed as a drop off. But the Pac-12 is the consensus weakest Power Five competition. Now, last year happened to be Caleb Williams. You happen to have Michael Penix there as well. So um, the the only thing is with Penix going from the Big Ten to the Pac-12 for me is that I just I view that almost as like a lateral thing. Um, I don't know. I view that move a little bit more laterally. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, a lot
Well,
of
I
the
mean,
reason.
also, how much better did Michael Penix look in with that cast around him versus Bo Nix should have theoretically lit up a weaker conference, and he just kind of continued to look mostly the same. He certainly got further at Oregon, but
Yeah. I mean, he also, he has is very a very stat driven type of offense, right? You'd say his completion percentage is pretty high, Bo Nix.
what at Oregon?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, this it's kind of like, you know, looking at Florida's offense right now with our quarterback. It's just completion percentage 73%, but it's like, yeah, but if you're checking down, 2 out of every 3 throws, your completion percentage is going to look, it's going to look better than you actually are as an offense.
I think a lot of Pac-12 stuff is bombs away offense too, and
I think it's not like the
I
Big 12 where,
no, it's not
uh,
like the Big 12. But what here's the
off-
interesting thing:
I mean,
Washington had three really good receivers
mhm,
for bombs away, and Oregon kind of just had Troy Franklin. So I think
yeah.
that's a to me that's a bigger point
Well,
in
my
that
point about
like go ahead.
my comparison to the Big 12 is where offense is clearly first, and all the resources these teams put in is on offense.
Yeah, but I think the better point for why it's unfair with Penix and Nix, and then I kind of don't want to talk about this anymore. But the bigger thing that I think is unfair is that Bo Nix may have went to weaker competition, but his team got I don't know if Oregon is necessarily weaker than Auburn, but in my opinion, Oregon was far less stacked than Washington. Michael Penix left Indiana and he went to a very good offense.
Oh yeah.
There are two solid tackles playing at Washington. That's big. They have three really good wide receivers. You know what I
Oregon
mean?
is
Like,
Oregon's a step up from Auburn in talent wise for sure.
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. And remember too, like Oregon has got a lot of Nike money, and
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah.
they have a lot of NIL money now too.
I mean,
So
there's a million reasons to actually go there. I just mean why you would view it as one way versus the other when you're doing scouting work.
yeah,
Um, so we've talked about trading up. We've talked about trading down. What do you want at 6? What's the move here?
my first move, honestly, is I'm listening to offers to trade down. I think that doesn't mean that's my goal, but I'm definitely listening with a very very open ears because I'm going back to what am I trying to do with this team right now? And we discussed it a lot in the last episode, and we both have the same philosophy that if you're going to rebuild this team and do it the right way, doing it from the inside out makes more sense from the outside in. And if right now we are best slotted to draft a wide receiver, That doesn't mean we don't need a wide receiver and we don't need weapons for a quarterback. What I'm saying is I would rather put myself in a position where, you know, I need to get as close as I can to the ball being snapped. I need to get my quarterback. I need to get my offensive line. I need to get my defensive line. I need to get my, you know, that fortified first before I really start worrying about wide receivers. And if I have the option, if somebody wants to trade up and wants to give me, you know, more picks for this draft and for next year's draft, so I can get more assets. I can package those up because maybe next year the quarterback I really, really want and I get extra draft picks. I can throw them all in a pot and say, here, that way I can move up to 2 or 3 and get the guy I really want. I want options. So my first thing really is listening to what are these offers that are really coming to me for someone who wants to get up to 6. And we're kind of in a little we're not in the greatest spot for 6. I don't think that Godfather offer is going to come, but you never know. You don't know. Somebody on their board might have a huge hard on for JJ McCarthy. And it's like, that's our guy. That we took him out to dinner. We looked at the film. We've done everything. He's us. And you never know. You just don't know in this league. All these boards are secret. We don't know. So that'd be the first thing I would be in. And if not, based on where we are at 6, rather than trade up, and because we have so many holes and we have so many depth issues, I just think you get the best guy on your board. Is probably going to be the third wide receiver that's available, and I think you just take him. And the draft is more than just the first round pick. There's other, you draft well on Friday and you do your stuff on Saturday. I said it over and over again that you don't build a team in 1 year. You don't build it on one draft. This is part of a process. And I don't think this general manager and this front office and this coaching staff feels the pressure that you have to do it now or never. And I think they'd stick to their plan.
I think that the first thing that I'm trying to do is trade up with New England.
Okay.
And I think that the Giants are okay with all 3 of the quarterbacks that we think are going to go. I think any team is okay with Caleb Williams. I think that teams would be crazy to be worried about Jaden Daniels being slight of frame for all the upside that he gives you. And, I have my reservations about Drake May, but most of them stem from wacky feet mechanics that need to get cleaned up badly that are affecting his throws, and general arm strength. But Brian Dable is a guy I feel comfortable with cleaning up mechanics related issues. I mean, Josh Allen couldn't hit the side of a barn. So if there's one thing that I can count on, or that I feel comfortable with Brian Dable correcting, it's mechanics. So I think that no matter what happens, one of those 3, well, math tells me that no matter what happens, one of those 3 will be available at 3. So rumor has it that New England's listening to some trade offers. There's no incentive for a QB needy, there's incentive for a QB needy team that has Bailey Zappi on the roster or whatever, would trade out of that spot. They have a new regime in there that needs to fix a lot of things. It's a bad team right now. I mean, the problems didn't start and end with Mac Jones, and the problems certainly didn't start and end with Bill Belichick. So, I mean, it is certainly justifiable for them to be like, you know what, we'll deal with the quarterback thing. This is a good chance for us to build a lot more stuff if we take this trade. That's all fine and dandy.
They also don't have a GM right now, right?
But no, I think I don't know. But here's
so
the
that means a lot, I think. It's so if you don't have a GM, you don't have anybody with a real blueprint and a vision of what they want to do.
I'm pretty sure they do, though.
Do they?
I don't know. I'm not going to operate on the assumption they don't.
I don't think they do. All right, but I mean, regardless, I mean that's just one thing. But yeah, I get your point. If it's the quarter, but again, it has to be if they're not in love with any of those quarterbacks, they may be looking to go down. I don't know. To me, it's I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. So you got a very old owner who is running out of time and may want to just pick a quarterback and try to think that's the fastest way back to being relevant is getting a quarterback. Who knows?
I don't know. They have a GM, but apparently nobody knows what he does or something. That's neither here nor there. My point is that there's a football. There are reasons for them to trade out. There is no reason for a QB needy team to make that trade before draft day, in my opinion, because they need a quarterback. So there's no reason for them to take the first offer. If the leak goes out there that they got this offer, then any team was like, "Oh, that's the price, huh?" Well, what if
Right.
I were to do a little bit more? So, I mean, to me, it makes no sense for any trade from a QB needy team in that top three to make any trade before the. Not, I wouldn't say necessarily when they're on the clock, but certainly before draft day.
And that's why I haven't seen anything yet.
Right. So, but I do think that New England could be quote unquote had. You know what I mean? And quite frankly, I look at this as this isn't an indication on Daniel Jones. It's just an opportunity to get a quarterback. At this point, I think it's fair to look at Daniel Jones and just be worried about the injuries alone.
Just go, just go younger, cheaper, healthier.
Yeah.
That's
So,
it. That's it.
trading up is something I would try to do first. If that's out of the question, I'm ready to trade down because I'm afraid of exactly the same thing you're saying. If the Giants select McCarthy at 6, again, I'm going to bank on Dable being Dable. And I'll just, I'm going to roll with it because I'm not also going to throw my remote at my TV for attention. But I will bank on the fact that Brian Dable makes things happen with quarter. I mean, if he can make Tommy DeVito look competent, I'm sure he can make JJ McCarthy look like something.
I think there's nothing that would make me throw the remote at the TV this year, honestly.
Yeah,
Unless we drafted Jordan Travis, that would make me throw the remote at the TV. But barring that brain fart of epic proportions, I don't think any of the likely scenarios. Trade down, get your wide receiver, hopefully trade up. I think all of those are just like, okay, that's what we're doing.
So that's obviously round one. What do you want throughout this entire draft process? Like, what do you want to not be worried? Since you're going to be worried about something, something is not going to get fixed this weekend. That's just a fact. Like, they're not going to plug every hole. What do you need to see addressed? Like with like starters.
I need to see a plan, I guess. And I think you had said something a couple weeks ago of, you can't fix everything all at once, so let's try to fix something first. I just believe that, and I can agree with you on this 100% also, but to me, this league is an offensive league. And this offense, for you name the reason, sucks. And not only does it suck, it's unwatchable at times. And to me, I think extra effort should be made on this offense. And I think it starts again with offensive line. I want to come out of this whole draft experience thinking we have a lot more options, at least that'll make the depth of this offensive line better. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to go into week one again with if somebody goes down, we are completely screwed. And I get it that, having a rookie as a backup is, a little scary, but I really want to start getting on to the assembly line of this offensive line is a priority of this team, and we are going to fortify it every year. Some years will be the opportunity to get a starter and a potential, right tackle of the future. Sometimes it's like, this is a guy, a swing tackle that's going to help us in, a couple different spots to, we're just adding depth here. And I just think that if we come out of this, kind of like, well, we took a receiver here, but then we took another cornerback here, and then we got this guy, and it's like we haven't addressed the core issues of this team. I'm going to be pretty pissed. So it's not fancy. It doesn't have fireworks, but getting these trenches finally, getting a process going where it's going to be self-building every single year starts this year, and I think I need to see that.
Yeah, man. I, I I think that if any maniac were to have fallen asleep at the wheel and let me control the war room, um, there is a serious chance that I use every single pick on an offensive player this
Yeah.
draft. But that's madman mentality, and that is putting too much responsibility on a child.
And yeah,
Um,
and that's what either of us said. Like I don't think neither of us said like every pick should be, we only focus on the offense, but I think
right? No, no,
the
no.
priority and the focus should be on the offense from an inside out approach.
Correct. Yeah. So that's actually how I feel, and I don't even necessarily need it to be inside out as a general philosophy. In this particular instance of how broken the offense is, it probably requires that. Um, but like at this point, I would say they need to get at least one starter on the offensive line, at least one starter at either wide receiver or tight end, and they need to get depth on the offensive line. They
Yep.
need they so like that means on Saturday evening I better be looking at two players for the offensive line. One I know is competing for a spot in his rookie year, and one I am hoping can fill in during a game and not screw anything up.
It is a
And
very solid rotation
but
piece.
but also has a projection where I'm like, I want to see him grow. Like I see he has the traits, but he needs to clean this up. This tells me in 2 years he could be competing for a spot. You know what I mean? Like I don't just mean
And that's why that guy
fodder.
may be drafted on Saturday, and that's fine.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But I don't mean fodder to fill depth spots. I mean depth with the potential for growth. That's what I need
Mhm.
from two players on the offensive line, and I need one skill position player added to this. Whether it is a wide receiver that starts at one of the three spots, don't care which, and or a tight end that is. Yeah, at this point, I can't count on Darren Waller to hold on to my cell phone for 2 minutes while I tie my shoe. So.
I mean, Darren Wall, he just announced he's separating from his wife. I mean, the last thing on his mind right now is football.
I'm not even sure that the Giants have been in communication with him or if it's
Yeah.
just been his agent. I mean, there's a lot of things wrong there. He's a shaky um, commitment to begin with, I would
Yep.
say.
Yep.
So he's really on, he's probably not just on thin ice anymore. He's half underwater.
And
So,
quite honestly, every single wide receiver position and every single tight end position is right for someone to take over and should be starting right away. That's what we're trying to get. There's no like, this guy is my wide receiver one. There is no, this guy is my tight end one. We should be able to get a guy who should be able to claim one of those two mantles immediately.
right. Like, you're pretty much penciling him into a starting spot.
Yes.
That's what realistically, out of whatever picks they have, I need to see four of them heavily committed to the offense for me to be fully happy. I don't really care where they are with the value. I don't even care if they're like, you know what, we need to make sure that we have a right tackle. So I don't care if it's a reach, we're getting this guy. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like
That's the trade-off for a reach is something. It's like from a
sometimes
value perspective, is you getting the guy you want, you think he's the guy you need.
I'll never forget the Dallas Cowboys selecting Travis Frederick in the first round. And I thought to myself, like, I'm pretty sure, like, he's good. I like him at center, but taking a center in the first round is dumb. It was like, that was like a big turning point in the way I looked at the draft at the time because to me, that was just like such bad value. I laughed at that pick. And then, 6 years down the line, I looked at it. It was like, who gives a shit? They got a quality starter for a very long time at an important position. It doesn't fucking matter. You forget. Oh, he was a first round pick. That's right. You know what I mean? Like it's not that important. It's important when you're building a roster over a short period of time. But if you hit on a third of your picks absolutely year after year, I don't think that the value matters as much.
We're playing. This is glorified blackjack. The draft, where just because I play my cards right doesn't mean I'm guaranteed anything. I still may not hit. So none of this is a guarantee, and none of it's value driven is all in perception. It's not reality. If like we talked about that before at the quarterback, if that's your guy, and again, we're not talking about I really like, the quarterback at, I don't know, West Virginia. Like that's my guy, but is obviously his value is not nearly, what other people think. We're not talking about that.
Will
We're
Greer.
yeah, we're kind of splitting hairs a little bit, kind of like, is this guy the sixth pick or is he the 12th pick or something? In the grand scheme of it, I think people get too, again, because we have so much time to talk about this, we get a little myopic in what is value and what does it mean. You get your guy, you got your guy, you got your value.
Right. Any final thoughts? It's the
Um,
title of the episode, but
any final thoughts? I'm curious, not only obviously what the rest of the division is going to do too. At this point now, it's just about let's just make our picks. I mean, again, I beg Giant fans, like I said in the opening, don't throw your phones because they didn't get the guy you wanted or the guy you thought was the value. Um, you know, we never have given grades on the night of a draft, and we won't this week because we don't know what it actually means. A pick is different than production. Um, I I'm sure we'll be talking about something on our next show that we had. We talked all about preparation. You've been scouting people since January. I'm sure we'll have storylines we'll be talking about. We had no idea we were going to be talking about, and that's what makes it always interesting and kind of fun.
you're not wrong about that. Um, So I will be at John Boy headquarters in New York City tonight. I will be on the Talking Giants channel and the JM Football channel. We will be live streaming the draft. It's going to be a party, and I will be there all week for Thursday night, Friday night, and for half of Saturday. I have some personal business I have to attend to for the second half of Saturday, which is unfortunate. So I mean,
I
I guess let me know what happens in like the seventh round or whatever. I got to run.
And I will be tonight. I will be at Smithfield Hall in the city at a Knicks watch party because, of course, when it rains, it pours. And tonight we have the draft, obviously, but we also have Knicks game 3 and Lightning game 3. So my brain, multitasking that it is, will be. I'll be handling watching the Knicks with my phone, with the draft, watching the Talking Giants coverage. So if you're in the city and you want to multitask with me, I'll be at Smithfield Hall. Just shoot me a DM. I'll let you know where and what's happening.
Awesome. I'm excited. It's going to be it's been a good week for New York sports. So I'm hoping that the
Nuts.
Giants on the clock doesn't shit the bed for everybody. But especially for the Giants because I know you're a great big Knicks fan. I know everybody here listening to this is a Knicks fan. I know Brian Dable and Joe Shane pretended to be Knicks fans at
I know
one
one
point.
person who isn't. That would be Bobby Skinner. So for you,
Well, I mean, and
take that.
I'm certainly not a Rangers fan, so I mean, I could
No.
care less. But it's a good feeling around when every team in one city is doing well.
Oh, it's exciting. I mean, you could feel the vibe at the Garden on Monday night. You could see just people walking around. I was walking around the city today, and I saw a lot of Ranger jerseys. I saw a lot of Knicks things. I see, it's exciting. And the problem is, this city for so long has had to deal with bad basketball and quite frankly, bad football.
Mm.
And, now at least one of the
Well, they've
football
always
teams,
had the Jets.
that's true. But I mean, we haven't held up our end of the bargain for, a generation almost now. And, hopefully that reversal of bad fortune, ends starting tonight with a draft that, if it's not the most exciting and the most headline grabbing, does what it's supposed to do and is make this team better and start acquiring pieces that will make this team better in the short term and the long term. That's what we want.
I'm super excited. I know I look not excited, but I'm just tired. I am super
It's
excited.
also it's also 11 o'clock at night on Monday, so we're all
Yeah.
tired.
Um, but I'm super excited for tonight. I'm excited for the next couple of years, just like I am every time it's Christmas in April for me.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to talk about this for the coming weeks. So the next time that you and I will meet for this show will be for our normal Tuesday morning episode. that will give me plenty of time to
Oh yeah.
look at everything, look at it in context, fully break it down. I'm sure it could, because the UDFA signings come fast and furious on
Oh
Saturday.
God, yeah. And that's
So
and I always make a point
that's like a
when I
whole
go
other draft class.
when I go through my thing about, how do you build a roster? It's not just a draft. It is trades. It is free agency. It is undrafted free agents. It's cut down moves. I mean, there's lots of different pieces, and yeah, you may not get a Pro Bowler on the signing on the Mad Wild West signings, but you might get a roster spot or two that's really going to help your team. You might get a starter. You might get a depth piece that you really need. So the story is not over once Mr. Irrelevant is picked. It's really just continuing.
So we will see you guys then. iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. Until then, and tonight especially, go
Go
Giants.
Giants.